such beauty. The bells, the children, and the bell choir, and Vicki, thank you so, so much. And I'd like for us to take just a little trip down memory lane. You've seen the title of the sermon, Bringing in the Sheaves. It's based on the last verse of the Old Testament reading from Psalm 126. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, carrying their sheaves. It's a song of harvest. It's a song of joy. The psalm is a hymn while the pilgrims are returning from 50 years of Babylonian captivity to Judah to re-enter the rebuilt temple, and they are bringing in the sheaves of harvest. Joan's going to play this. Sit back and enjoy, and if you know it, sing along.
So how do we reap joy as they reap the harvest? We reap the
joy by planting the seeds. I know the cliche is "don't worry, be happy," and it is a wonderful cliche. I think I've used it as a sermon title before, but being happy and joy-filled is a little more complex than that, in that it does require some discipline on our part, some commitment, some of that that's missing today across some of our generations in Americana. It requires a planting of seeds, a labor, a planting of these seeds. In other words, if we're going to have that joy. With that said, I would like to consider, at least from my point of view, gleaning from the Old and the New Testament reading, what I consider these seeds to be that we must plant, must sow, if we are to know this joy firsthand. Number one, and in a twofold way actually, but beginning with the positive, is the seed of faith, if you will. Believe, both scriptures assume that they do, believe in God, as opposed to being an agnostic or an atheist. A believer, believe in God, our Creator, believe in God, our Creator, who loves us. And thus, in turn, it seems a wonderful, miraculous thing takes place when we believe in God. We turn and believe in ourselves. And it is that belief in ourselves, it is our confidence in who we are as a child of God and our life being a gift from God, that is the difference between success and failure, joy and sadness. Believing in God and believing in ourselves, as opposed to a dreary, mundane, sad, purposeless, wandering, wasted life of disbelieving and sadness. Jesus made the point that all things, not some, not a few, but all things, everything and anything one can imagine, all things are possible, all things to him or her who believes. He said, even like this mountain, you can say, move from here to there, and if you believe, it will be done. If I have that kind of confidence in my God and myself, that together with him I can overcome any obstacle or move any barrier, then I am happy in that joy. Secondly, this one might surprise you, the negative side of faith. Believe in the devil. Do you believe in the devil, Robert? Listen, I read the news just like you do. I watch the news just like you do. I read the narratives of history. I see what happens in present day just like you do. And I find that there are some things that I deem unexplainable other than the presence of evil. Beelzebub, or the devil, or Satan, or any other way you'd like to look at it. It seems the grand theme between which we live out our lives is not only obvious in the Bible that we read and share today, but it's obvious in literature and art and all across humanity, that tension between good and evil. It is the greatest challenge, I think, for a parent to raise and for grandparents to raise their children within this world that is not only good and full of gladness and happiness, but evil. It demands of us being able to walk a thin line of faith in the sense that it is a delicacy between being aware of this good God in life, but not failing to also be wary, to be smart, to be savvy. That's what we want our children to be. We want them to trust people and to trust life and to trust things. But at the same time, we're not so sure we want them to trust everyone. In fact, we'd like for them to learn what Paul said in these bullets that he ends his letter to the Thessalonians with when he said, test everything. Don't assume it's good because it says it's good, or he's good because he says he is. Be wise and discerning. As in this quote someone posted on Facebook in the last few days. This is the last part that I'm thinking here. Forgive those who insult you, attack you, belittle you, or take you for granted. But more than this, forgive yourself for allowing them to hurt you. This, I think, is what we wish to teach our children, to sow in their minds and their hearts who they are. That yes, there is bad in the world, but this good God of love and strength has overcome it all, and it is believing in Him positively that will enable you to conquer the negative in this life. Not only because of your faith, because of your wisdom as well. Now again, these may be just simple things here in terms of what I'm enumerating for seeds that reap the harvest of joy, but see what you think about the next one. It's so obvious. Go to church. Go to church. God is there. So is the devil. The church is this place where good and bad people gather in good times and bad. It is a place that we come as we are now to worship, to fellowship, to sing, to pray, to read the Bible, to commune together, to baptize believers, to listen, to learn, to lean on one another, and to testify. Old time there. Testimony. Anyone go give a testimony? My daddy used to say when no one would stand up and he wasn't going to leave the service until at least a few did. He'd say, you know, there's two kinds of testimonies, brothers and sisters. There's the popcorn testimony where you just stand right up and you testify. And then there's the barbershop testimony where I've got to say, next. Next. This is the place we come to give our tithes and offering. This is the place we come to hear the Word of God. All in all, bringing it to a peak. This is the place to go to church. Why? Because all of this put together today in such beauty as it has been in song and word and deed and child and adult, all of it brings us to the place that somewhere in that, at least at the end, that we leave this place, as the Thessalonian letter reads, filled with the Spirit. In other words, we leave here with something we didn't have when we came in here. We may have run out of gas this week or faced so many negatives. We needed a place to stop to refill. And now we're leaving endowed with God's presence, with remembrance of who we are, the gifts we have and we can overcome, and that if we can believe, there's nothing we can't do. In fact, all things are possible. And even with a little bitty faith, little bit of faith, like a mustard seed, we can accomplish big things. We come here and we leave with the armor, and we go forth fortified and with joy. That's why we go to church. To plant those seeds, to reap that harvest of joy in our hearts. And while we're sowing, there's one other thing. Why not sow putting this here today into practice? Put it into practice. Let the talk become a walk, as they say. Put it into practice. In other words, I'm saying that I think you and I should be taking this message from Paul, these words from the psalmist, take it personal. It's meant to be so. One of the greatest compliments I heard the other night from one of our young adult members in regards to my sermons was that they felt like I was talking exactly to them where they are, which is very nice to say. There's only one balance I would have to say. That in one little way they're mistaken, I'm talking to me. I'm preaching to me as well. I hope you take personal the message today. And I hope you apply it, that is, plant the seeds, create by these seeds that are practiced here today in this conglomeration of action and people, that you and I in our individual life take all of these seeds and we plant them in our daily life, and they become channels, they become windows, they become doors sow the seeds, we reap the harvest. You reap what you sow. Without sowing anything, you don't reap anything, or as a former boss of mine said, nothing from nothing equals nothing. So what are the seeds that we can take personal from this? They're the obvious seeds, the same that we've heard a million times, and maybe it's not so much in how many times we hear them, but hearing them anew, hearing them deeply in the core of our being, and understand that we're not just talking or playing here, that these things can really work. For example, prayer. Prayer is the first seed. We've done that here today with the Lord's Prayer. William Barclay would correct us and say, from his scholarly point of view, that it's better called the disciples' prayer. The Lord's Prayer is the disciples' prayer. It's a model for you and I, if we have difficulty praying, to use any way we so choose in our own way to make it our prayer. It's opening ourselves up for those blessings, for that fruit to grow, for that harvest to come. Yes, you can pray. Secondly, reading the Bible, taking it personal, reading the Bible. Hearing it read here is one thing, reading it together is another, but reading it yourself, it, just like prayer, is not as difficult as we make it. Yes, it's 66 books over all this number of years, and it has its different settings, but there are helps, or even with no help at all, you can pick it up and read it, and you will discover yourself in it. The stories, as age-old as they are as needful and practical as today's words here that we are talking together. Just pick it up and read it. That's all you have to do. Another seed that I think is important that can be looked at dimensionally, but I will look at it in one way, and that is forgiveness. That's a big joy robber there. Resentment, hardness of heart, not forgiving, not letting go. I think you're doing it to them, but you're really not. You're doing it to you. And forgiveness does not mean condoning. It simply means letting go. But I don't want to talk about someone else here. I want to talk about planting that seed in one particular respect,